Okay, good morning to everybody. We're up to Mem Amid Beis. Mem Amid Beis, Zion Amid Beis. Okay, listen, cut me a little slack there, Baruch. We're up to Zion Amid Beis. Okay, the pasuk that we need is regarding killing b'shogeg. Vashayavu among the many psukim. You come to your friend in a forest, lachtoiv eitzim, to cut wood, v'nitche yodai bagarzen, his hand slips from the axe, lichrois eitz, to cut the eitz, v'noshel ha-barzel mina eitz, and literally the barzel, it leaves the eitz, umotza esrayeu, it finds his friend, umeis, hu yonas elachas aharim ha'ele v'choy, and then he'll go what? To the Ari Miklat. Then he will go what? To the Ari Miklat. Okay, so it's mashma. The question at hand is, what exactly is shooting out and killing the person b'shogeg? Is it the axe head of iron, or is it the wood that he chops that's going out and killing? And that seems to be the machlokes tanoim. Is it the iron itself, or is it the piece of eitz that shoots out? Nishban arbasel mikatoi, the barzel slips off its handle, the harag, and it goes ahead what? And it kills. So nishma basel mikatoi, it's going off the handle and it's killing somebody. Mikitoi, it's killing somebody. Rabbi oime goyla. Rabbi says you don't go to golus because Rabbi holds, fellas, that the pasuk what's describing is the eitz shooting out. The chachamim moimim goyla. Then you goyla. Mina eitz. Second case, if it's the eitz that shoots out and kills someone, hamis bakeya. Rabbi Omer goyla. Rabbi says you go to golus. Chachamim ain't a goyla. So again, by garzin, by the iron itself, Rabbi says no golus. Chachamim say yes golus. By the eitz itself that goes out, Rabbi says golus, and Chachamim say you don't go to golus. Tanya, Amalem Rabbi the Chachamim. Rabbi who says that you don't go to golus for the barzel, to the Chachamim say that you do. Does it say the barzel goes ahead and slips off its eitz? The barzel chops mino eitz. Mina eitz is mashma that what? It's the eitz killing. V'oid. In addition to that, we have two psukim. Nemar eitz lamata. It says the pasuk I just quoted. V'noshal barzel mino eitz. V'nemar eitz lamayla. In the beginning of the pasuk says v'nitcha yadoi begarzen lichrois eitz. So above, when it says lichrois eitz, obviously it's going on the eitz itself. So therefore, it says the Chachamim to Rebbe. Therefore, it makes sense to say that. Rebbe says to the Chachamim that it makes sense to say that it's just like the above is speaking about eitz at the beginning of the pasuk, not the iron. So too, v'nashal baslam in eitz. It means speaking about the eitz and not the iron. Thus, if the iron shoots out and kills someone, says Rebbe, you don't go to Golus. Okay. So ma eitz ha'amar l'mayla min eitzim isbakeya. Did I skip? No. Elanema eitz lamata, v'nema eitz l'mayla. Ma eitz ha'amar l'mayla, when it says, the pasuk says that what? Lichroisa eitz, and means the eitz itself, min eitzim isbakeya, the eitz that's being chopped, af eitz ha'amar l'mayta, when it says enough, nashal min eitzim isbakeya. Okay, that's Rebbe Shita. Amar Rabbi Barashi, Amar Lehem, Amar Rebbe, Amar Rashi, Amar Rav. Ushneim, both Rebbe and Rabbanon Mikro Echad Darshu. Rebbe who says it's going on the eitz, and the Chachamim who say it's going on the iron, and the Chachamim who say that it's going on the iron, right? Are arguing. They're arguing in a pasuk. What does the pasuk say? V'noshal habazal min eitz. Rebbe Omer Yeshem leMesiris, and the Rabbanan say Yeshem leMikra. Okay, going back in time to the beginning of Sanhedrin, or the first parak of Sukkah, we have the concept of what takes prominence. Is it the way the Mesorah of Moshe passed down how to pronounce it, or the way it's read? Again, we saw a Tosfos in Sanhedrin that said the machlokes is only when it is an afkamina both ways. But everyone's moed Yeshem leMikra, I think. I forgot the little Tosfos. I know exactly where it is, but anyway, so it says Yeshem le. How do you pronounce it, or how it's written? Now it's written Vav Nun Shin Lamed, and I can pronounce that Venishel. Venishel means it causes something else to go ahead. It's the iron causes something else. So Rebbe would say yesh aim limisoris, the way what it is, the way it is passed down. And therefore, since I could read it as Venishal, therefore I will say it's not going on the iron, it's going on what the iron causes, Venishal. And the Chacham say, no, yesh aim lemikra, and it's written Venashal, which is mashma, the iron itself. Says the Gemara, let's see it inside. Amar Rav Chia ber Avashi, Amar Rav, Ushnei Mikra Echad Darshu, V'nashal Abazlam and Eitz, Rebbe Sava Yeshem Mesoris V'nishel Ksiv, and therefore I'll read it as V'nishel, and therefore it means it causes something else. Rabban Sava Yeshem Lemikra, the way it's written, V'nashal Karinan. It's very Gemara. If Rebbe Yeshem Mesoris for you, like this Rebbe hold Yeshem Mesoris, you go after the way it's passed down, not the way it's Mikra. Amar Rav Yitzchak, by Yosef, Amar Rav Yochanan, Rebbe Yehuda ben Royetz, Rebbe Shammai, Rebbe Shimon, Rebbe Akiva. This is some lineup. Rabbi Akiva, Kula, Svirlu, they're all of the opinion, Yesh Em Lemikra. So you want to say Rabbi Hills Yesh Em Lemisiris, and we'll read it as Venishal, and therefore it causes something else. We have Rebbe saying Yesh Em Lemikra. On that, the Gemara says you're right. Behind the Kani Lovaoid. Therefore, you had to come up with another reason. Yes, it says Eitz Lamato, Lichreis Mina Eitz. It says Lamayla Minasha Mina Gazim Mina Eitz. Therefore, just like above, it is Lichreis Eitz. It means going on the Eitz itself, so to below. In other words, Yesh Aim Lemisiris is not going to wash, because that can't be the Svaras HaMachloikis, because we have another source saying Rebbe holds Yesh Aim Lemikra, right? We have in Sanhedrin, he holds Yesh Aim Lemikra, so if he holds Yesh Aim Lemikra, that can't be the Svara of why it's going on the Eitz and not the Garson. So it must be because why it's the Eitz in the Pasuk itself, the beginning of the Pasuk, Lichroisa Eitz, which is obviously the Eitz, therefore the Vanashal, Hagazim in the Eitz is going on the Eitz as well. Now, according to Rebbe, it's a bit of a chiddush, fellas. You're cutting a piece of wood. That wood is shooting out, killing somebody. We know there's something called grama bin izakin. We hold not only is there grama bin izakin, we know there's grama b'misa. Right? We spoke about it in Perik in Sanhedrin that if you kill someone al yidei grama, best and shalmata cannot go ahead and kill you. But if you call the lashon of the Rambam, right? He is a merit seach, and Hashem's going to take care of him. We brought in the Rambam at the time. Why is this not a grama? You're going ahead, you're hitting it, and it's shooting out and killing somebody. Ella, you must say that it's kocho. You must say that's considered direct mazik, right? In other words, if you would have taken the axe itself and hit him, that's direct. It seems that you're putting the koyach into this eitz is as if you shot a gun at him, or else you'd have a problem. You wouldn't be chayiv misa. When he's going to gullus, fellas, there has to be a chayiv misa, or else you're not going to gullus. Remember, we spoke out yesterday, karv oinus, karv lemezid. We must, therefore, according to Rebbe, hold this act of the hitting the wood and the wood shooting out is tantamount to what? To a direct act, or else it's grama. Good? So now, what happens in the following case? Let's see. Amra Papa, man deshadya pisa ledikla. You're taking a clod of earth, you're throwing it against a palm tree. V'asa tamre, it's dislodging a clump of dates. V'ozil tamre v'katel, a person walking under the tree now is struck by the falling dates, and he dies. So would you go to Golus or not? So Banu l'machloikis the Rebbe v'Rabbanan. This l'chor is the exact same machlokes Rebbe and Rabbanan. In other words, throwing the clod of earth to hitting the dates is the same thing as taking the axe and chopping the wood. Like Rebbe, you would go to Galus. Like the Chachamim, you won't go to Galus. That's what Rav is saying. So again, what's the parallel? The koyach of you chopping the eights is the same koyach as you throwing when you dislodge the eights with the gazin, you're dislodging the dates with what? With your clod of earth. And same achloikas. Like Rebbe, you'd go to Galus, and like the Chacham, you wouldn't go to Galus. Says in Reb Shita, says I might think it's kikoyach koichai. In other words, there's more of a direct force, I would think, when you take an axe and hit wood than when you throw a clod of earth and your koyach is in there. Now, if it's koyach koichai, that is grama. That is, you're not going to go to Galus. The secondary force, you won't go to Galus. The reason you're going to Galus is because we're viewing it as the initial force, is direct. So I would think perhaps throwing a clod of earth, hitting dates throwing it is one koyach, hitting the date is the second koyach. Kemash malon that no, throwing it is not throwing it, and when you hit the date, it's your initial koyach. It's the same koyach as when you hit. So kamash malon that what? That it's koyach. How would you find a case of koyach vis-a-vis a palm tree? Kigoin the shoda pisa, you throw a clod of earth, umachia legarma, and it hits the garma is the branch. It's hitting what? The branch. Good. So now, when you throw it, that's your foot. The initial force is hitting the branch. It's not hitting the dates. Now the branch is hitting the date. That's koyach. Guys, you hear the difference. The first case is my power is hitting the date directly. In this case, my power is hitting the branch directly, and then the branch is causing it to fall. That would be koyach. It's a very fascinating concept. Think about this. The guy is walking along, the same guy. He's going to die the same way. He's going to be, as we say in the vernacular, dated. Right? He's going to get bombed by a cluster of grapes. The question, dates, like between dates and grapes, I'm getting famished. So now, if you go ahead and it hits the guy, it's a tremendous difference. If the clod of earth hit the dates directly, you go to Golis, Yechai Misa, B'Shogeg. If, however, you hit the branch that causes the dates to hit the guy, you're not going. We know this all the time, like exactly. We did Sanhedrin, right? It's an amazing thing, like how exact the Torah has to be in order to go ahead to punish a guy, be they Adam. So again, that would be the case. So you go ahead. Heik Mishkachel is going to shoda pisa umachia legarma. You go ahead, you throw it. It hits the garma. The garma is the branch. The branch v'ozal garma umachia the gozal garma, and it hits the cluster of gates. The kavasa. Kavasa Rashi says is the cluster of gates itself. Who eshkol at tamarim, right? V'asatami v'azitami the kavli, and then it goes and kills somebody.
God, yo.
Okay. Hazorik Evan Rishus Harabim. Guy takes a stone, throws it into Rishus Harabim. Guy takes a stone, throws it into Rishus Harabim for harag, and he kills someone. Hires the goyla. Now all of you are sitting there saying, "What are you talking about? I take a rock, I throw it into Rishus Harabim, and hit someone. Isn't that Karav Lamezid? There's a good chance of Rishus Harabim that there's an individual there. That's how could you go to gola? So obviously the Gemara is going to ask the kasha. Right? The Gemara is going to ask that kasha. How's it possible? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, when the Eved goes ahead and leaves his hand, so you're throwing an object. When you threw the object, it had no chance of meeting the person because the person wasn't there. Let's say the person met the object. The object is your force is there. So there's a difference between if the person's there and you throw it and it hits him, versus you throw it and he meets the object. It says Rabbi Yaakov, in that case, how he said pata from Galus. So that's case number two. Case number one, you're throwing it to Rishus Harabim. Case number two is where you meet the object versus the object meeting you. It's your estate, your property. You throw an evan into your chatzar, for harag and to kill someone. If the nerag, if the person who gets damaged, in this case killed, had permissions to be there, then goyla, you go to golas. V'imlav, and that ain't a goyla. Shenemar, v'shayovu esareya b'yar. The whole parsha of golas is stated where you come upon your friend b'yar in a forest. Ma'yar, just like a forest, reshus l'nisik u'lemasik l'konesh Hashem. That's reshus for anyone to come there. Avkol reshus l'nisik u'lemasik l'konesh Hashem. When is the parsha of golas stated? When anyone has the right to be there, as opposed to chatzir, where a guy trespassed, he didn't have the right to be there, therefore you wouldn't go to golas. Yatsa chatzir balabayas shem reshus l'nisik l'konesh Hashem. Another din, Abishol Omer, and the Gemara is going to spend a lot of time on this. Mahat tavis eitzim reshus. Just like going into a forest and cutting eitzim is optional. It's not something you have to do. Av kol rishus. When do you go to galus? If it's a rishus. Yotza av hamakes beno. this would exclude a son, a father hitting a son, v'harav haroides talmidai, or a rebbe hitting his talmid, right? It was shliach bezdin who was going ahead on and giving malchus to an individual. All these cases are a mitzvah. It seems to be a mitzvah to hit your kid. It seems to be a mitzvah for a rebbe to hit his talmid, and it's a mitzvah for the shliach bezdin. So in other words, Abishol is extrapolating from the fact that Yar means Rishus. This would preclude the same action by a mitzvah. If it would result in someone's death, you would not go to Gullus. Again, the Torah Shel Bal Peh describing everything that you would not know from the Shai Shebichsav. The Rishus Rabbim makes through Fred the Gemara the obvious question. You take a rock, you throw into Rishus Rabbim, you're going to tell me that you go to Gullus? You're amazed. Or Karvel amazed. Amar Rav Shmuel by Yitzchak, b'soiser es kaisloi. Right? It's not speaking where you stam, you take a rock and you throw it into Rishus Rabbim. It's speaking where you're knocking down your wall. Says the Gemara, if you're knocking down a wall, you should look into it more, right? You go ahead, you knock down a wall, it's going to fall down. So in other words, taking a rock, throwing it in, you would be patur from Gullus because you're carved lamezid. On the other hand, if you go ahead right and knock down a wall and someone walks underneath the wall, then you're going to be chayiv. The Gemara says, right, it's still carved lamezid. You should have looked. You should have looked. You still carved lamezid. After the Gemara says, es kaisa b'layla. And you're doing it at night. Nighttime also you should. In other words, I don't understand why if you're knocking down your wall and you kill somebody, why is not carved lamezid? In other words, you always have to be careful in these situations, right? There's a warning label. You have to be careful. So what do you mean that your person's going to go to Gullus? After the Gemara says kaisleil ashpa, you're going ahead and you're knocking down your wall, and your wall is going to a place where people seldom go because it's a garbage dump. Now, why would people go to a garbage dump? Because in those days there was not private plumbing, and therefore they would use it as a latrine from time to time. Now, what are we exactly speaking about? If people are accustomed to use this ashpa as a place to relieve themselves, the guy's paisheya by knocking down a wall, and he shouldn't go to Gullus. And if it's not barabim, people never go there, then oinasu. As we spoke out yesterday in the Hakdama to the second parak, the only time you go to Gullus is when it's a shogeg. If it's an oinus, meaning it's something I could not have thought about, or it's karv lemezid that I should have thought about, you're not going to go. So what's this case over here? You're finally saying throwing a rock means you're knocking down your wall into an ashba that is used as a bathroom. If people don't use it that often, you're an oinus. If people use it all the time, then you're a presheya. So either way, you should not go to Gullus. That's the Gemara's kasha. On Rav Papa and through Rav Papa, like tzricha elo ashba ha'asuya liponos ba b'layla. It's an ashba that people go at night. Vein ha'asuya lifnas ba b'yoyim. Right, but people don't use it during the day. However, the ikri demakri v'yasiv, right, and it happened that a person used it during the day, so he's knocking it down during the day. People don't use it, and this was used this time. People don't turn there during the day, and because people go ahead and do it from time to time. People do from time. So again, when we say in the Mishnah, guys, look, guys, this Mishnah is no kimta. Go back to the Mishnah. You know what it's speaking about? You're knocking down a wall into an ashpa during the daytime that is only used at night. Now, why are you not an oinus? Because it could be someone might use it during the day. Why are you not karvel amazed? Because people don't use it during the day. That creates that middle scenario of what? Of shogeg, where you go to Gullus. So the Mishnah is an ukimta. Rabbi Yaakov was of the opinion that what? That if a person went ahead, threw it, and another person then stuck his head out, you're not going to go to Gullus. Tanrabanon. Okay, what does the pasuk say, fellas? V'ashayavo Yisrael biyar lachtoiv eitzim v'nitchi yoda begarsin lichretz eitz v'noshel abasam on eitz u'motza esre'ehu. Motza is mashma. He found something that was there already. U'motza prat lemamsias atzmai. Motza, you find it. Prat, the person who finds it himself. that if you threw it and no one was there, and then the person stuck his head out, he found it. So that's not matzah. Matzah means that it found him rather than him finding it. Good? Mikan Amr Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, im sheyatza even miyadai. If the time the Evan left his hands, hoitzi Allah es roishay, this person knocked his head out, the kibla pata. Now, it's mashma that matzah means that he was there from before, right? Matzah means when you threw it, he was there. So matzah is mashma, the lashon of meikara, that it was there from before. Yes? Guys, important. Matzah, when you threw it, matzah, he was there. Prat lemamsias atzmo, then he came afterwards. So when it says the word matzah, it's mashma, it's there from before. Okay, there's a din like this. If a person goes ahead and sells his stei achuza during a 50-year period, right? He can't redeem it before 2 years are up. He can't redeem it before 2 years are up. He's not able to. And if he doesn't redeem it, then it would go back to him in Yovel. Okay, let's say he has money. When he sells it, he has money. In other words, he has money when he sells it. Then he can't be paid it right away. In other words, he can't be paid it. He's not able to be paid it. Why? Because it has to be that he only got money now, not that he had money from before. So let's see, and there we're going to see the lashon of matzah means like now. What does the pasuk say in the parsha of Stei Achuza? You're telling me matzah in the parsha of Hoirig b'Shoigeg, it's mashma meikara, that the person's head was there before, right? Says the Gemara, l'meimer de matzah meikara mashma remino is yistira state in Torah the ishki lo yeh lo goyel. If a person does not have a person to redeem his field, v'sigu yadai, and he gets the money together, umatzah kedei gulasai, and he finds enough to go ahead and be goyel. Now, what does that mean? Umatzah prat lematzui. He can only redeem it with money that comes after the sale, not with money that he had before the sale. Shalayimcha b'rachaik. He shouldn't sit. What would he do? He'll make harama. He'll sell the field that's far away. V'yigol b'karev. And be goyel what in a field that's closer, right? V'yigol b'ra allows the field to sell. V'yigol b'yafa. Either way, he can't go ahead and take the existing funds from the field that's barachik or the field that's bara. So, of course, you see, matzah means what? He has to attain the money rather than have the money. Freg the Gemara is stira. You're telling me matzah means it's there before. You see, by stei achuza, matzah means it will come into his possession, not that it's there before. So it's matzah's mashma futuristic, that it's going to come now. There's no carte blanche shot in matzah. It depends upon context. Everything depends upon context. So therefore, hasam minyani dekra umatzah damya devihisik yadai. What does it say over there? He will vehisik yadai. It'll come into his possession. So when it says it comes into his possession, matzah also means futuristic. What will come into his possession? Right? From now on, but not from before. Af matzah by stei achuza nami midhashta means from now rather than before. Hocha in the parsha of what of right seach b'shoigeg minyani dekra umatzah dum yediyar my yar midid yisimei kara, just like the forest is there before. Afu matzah nami midid yisimei kara. It means that the neherag was there from before. So it's not a kasha that matzah has a common definition that you could ask a stira. It really depends totally on context. The context of stei achuza is futuristic. The context of what of harig b'shoigeg is past. Hazarik esev, and we said a person the next din, a person's going ahead. He throws an even and v'shus anisik mazik, and what we need is really the next case of abishol. Just like yar, you have it's optional to cut the wood. That's so too. The act of you're doing is an optional act. What happens if you're cutting wood? Let's say, guys, hypothetically for the mizbeach. So you might think you're doing a mitzvah, and therefore you should be potter. Okay, says the Gemara the following. How do you know when it says that the guy comes to a forest to cut wood? It's speaking about cutting wood. That's a rishus. And therefore, you're learning out that if you would go ahead and kill someone while performing a mitzvah, you're potter from galus. Maybe Dilma me chatavis eitz in the sukkah. Maybe it's speaking about what? Cutting wood for a sukkah. It's a mitzvah. According wood for the pyre of the mizbeach. Again, you have a whole shot predicated upon the assumption that cutting wood is a rishus. Maybe cutting wood is a mitzvah. And therefore what? You'd go to gullus even if you're cutting wood for a mitzvah. Again, Abishol is saying that you wouldn't go to gullus if you kill someone in an act that's a mitzvah. Why? Because cutting wood is a rishus. So therefore, when do you go to gullus? Similar to rishus. Mashen ke mitzvah, you don't go to gullus, despite the fact of being the exact same act. According to Rabbi, the eight's shooting out. According to Chachamim, the barzel's shooting out. So, again, a legal loophole, correct? If you go ahead and you're doing a mitzvah, you're not going to go. Fred the Gemara, but 1 second. You assume that what? That cutting the wood is a rishus. How do you know? Maybe you're cutting wood for a sukkah. Maybe you're cutting wood for the maracha. And if that's the case, then you go to gullus, even if what? If you're cutting wood for the mitzvah. Legally, and even so, the Torah says you go to gullus. So Amalei, who said to who? The Rabbanan to Rava. Rava answered, "Kivide matzah chatov." Since if you find the wood cut already, lav mitzvah, hashtalami lav mitzvah. Fellas, you go to the forest, and you find wood for the sukkah. Cut wood. Cut. Do you have to cut? You don't have to cut. You find wood for the mizbeach. You don't have to cut. So in other words, says Rava, cutting wood is still fair to say that it's dafka mitzvah. Why? Because it could be, but not necessarily. It could be, but not necessarily. It could be that what? That if you found wood for the sukkah, you don't have to cut it. If you found wood for the maracha, you don't have to cut it. So memela, then it's considered like a b'shus. Eser Ravina Rava Yotza Av Hamaka Espino Varava Roides Talmidoi Ushliach Bezdin. Now, if your svara that you're telling me is there's a potential for a mitzvah, but you don't have to perform the mitzvah, you don't go to Golus. From our case in the Mishnah, I'll ask you, maybe you don't have to perform the mitzvah. You don't have to hit your kid. You don't have to hit your Talmud, right? Shliach Bezdin says the Gemara. What happens if your kid is learned? But the Rebbe sitting, or the father sitting the child, maybe the kid is learned, and therefore there's no mitzvah. But nonetheless, what? You're going to tell me you don't go to, you can tell me that what? You still go to Golus? You said a Karpan statement. You said that if a father hits a child, he never goes to Golus. If a Rebbe hits a Talmud, he never goes to Golus. Says the Gemara, lav mitzvah, hashtanami lav mitzvah. In other words, let's pick the case of the father. The father is trying to teach his son Torah, and he doesn't want to learn. The Rebbe is trying to teach the Talmud, doesn't want to learn, so you begin to hit him. Okay, it's a mitzvah to hit him in order to get him to learn. Good. Now, old school, as we say, old school, right? So you're hitting him to learn. So now, what happens if he's learned? So that would be the exact same parallel. Well, I have wood already, right? The wood's cut. So this guy's learned. So you can tell me there that what, he goes to Galus? Of course he doesn't. So in other words, Ravina is asking Rava in your svara, Rava, according to you, that since it's not necessarily going to be that you have to perform the mitzvah, right? It's considered a rishus. In Cain, hitting a Talmud or a father hitting a son also can be optional. It also could be he's learned, right? And therefore, if that's the case, then you should go to Galus. Okay. Afagav says the Gemara. The ilu gomar lav mitzvah hashnami lav mitzvah. When says hasam afagav the gomar mitzvah. There, even if he's learning, it's a mitzvah to hit him. Dichsiv, the pasuk says, Yasir bincha v'yanichecha v'yitein ma'adanam nafshecha. Yasir bincha, you go ahead and take care of your kid, meaning you little applied psychology. V'yanichecha and v'yitein ma'adanam linafshecha. You'll be in good shape, right? You'll be in good shape. Go hit the kid, Benji. You go. You'll be in good shape. You'll be in good shape. You know what? So in other words, even if he's learned, even if hypothetically he's being makar of people in Dallas, beat him up. You know what? So in other words, bish by wood, If it's cut, you don't have to cut it. By a kid, even if the kid's learning, you can still hit the kid. If the kid's learning, you can still hit the kid. Hadarama Rava, Lav Milsi the Amri. Nah, that's not true. I'll give you a better teretz. It's in other words, I can bring you a raya from the pasuk. It's speaking about a rishus. It says Vashayava Yesrayeu biyahar. Now he comes upon his friend in the forest. The boy ayel, the boy loyal. He didn't have to go in the forest. He didn't have to go. Mitzvah. If you're telling me you're speaking about cutting a mitzvah, misagid loyal, is it possible that he doesn't go? Fellas, what's the mashmais? Ashayavoy biyar. You're coming, you're coming to find a friend in your forest. Mashma coming to the forest is you can come or you can't come. But if you're telling me that it's cutting for a mitzvah, what do you mean you can't come? You can. It's not optional. You have to go. Elif, the pasuk you see, it's speaking about what? Cutting of a rishus. Again, we're just fine-tuning the pasuk. Says Rava, you're right. Forget what I told you about. If you find it cut, you don't have to do a mitzvah. If you find right, forget that. I have a better proof that it's not speaking about what? A cutting of a mitzvah. It could be that there was no wood and you'd have to cut, but it doesn't say that. It says you come upon your friend in the forest. You're coming in the forest. Why are you coming in the forest? You want to? You don't want to. But if it's a mitzvah, you have to. The pasuk of Asher Yoves B'Reu, it's not mashma, you have to. So from the coming, we can see that it doesn't mean a holtz hacking of a mitzvah. The mela, therefore, what? You will be, that's the chiyuv of galus. Only Rav Adabar Aval Rava, Kol Hechet Ksiv Asher the Iboihu. Now, okay, just like we did by matzah, we did a definition of the word matzah. Doesn't mean meikara, it means mahashta. What about the word asher? Guys, asher yova yesreyehu. You're teaching of asher that. What does that mean? If I want to, yes. If I want to, not. Asher yovo yesreyehu. If I want to come, if I don't want to come. Asher yovo. I have that option. Good. I have that option. That's what it's mashma. I have the option. Asher yovo. So now I'm going to show you another pasuk which says asher. And it can't be that what? That you have that option. Okay, what's that pasuk? El Me'ata. The ish asher yitma, a person asher, the word asher, yitma, that contracts tuma, v'lo yischata, and he doesn't have what? The paraduma spritzed upon him. V'nichbasa nefesh ahi, mitoich hakol, ki es mikdash shem timei. So he walks into the base of Mikdash Tamei, he gets karas. Now, fellas, if you're going to teach asher is optional, that would mean he had the option of becoming Tamei or not becoming Tamei. What about a Meis Mitzvah? Do you have the option? If you Tamei through a Beis Mitzvah and you walk into the Beis Hamikdash, what do you get? You get the same chorus. You get the same chorus. So you want to tell me from the Parsha of Horei B'Shoigeg, Asher means optional. I'm bringing you from the Parsha of Mikdash, going into the base of Migdash, that what? That it can be optional. Because if you teach optional, here's the way you would teach it. You write the ish asher yitma, that he contracted tumma optionally, meaning he didn't have to. Then v'lo yischata, and he doesn't have the paraduma spitz, gets karis mashma. But if he didn't have the option, such as the mitzvah, he wouldn't get karis. But we know that's not true. Iboy mitama, iboy loy mitama. Meis mitzvah leisagi lemitama. Meis mitzvah, it's not optional. Hachanami depata if you went into the base of Mikdash. So we have a question: how can you teach asher as being optional, like you do by Hari B'Shoigeg? We see by Kedushas Mikdash Kedushav. It's not like that. Shani Hossam, it's different by the base of Mikdash. It says the word from the word. It says the word Damakra Yitama. It says Yitama Yiyeh Mikol Makan. Okay. The word Tamiyiyeh, the pasuk says, fellas, we're going to ask a question on this in a minute. It says, Kol hanegeh b'meis b'nefesh adam asher yamos v'lo yischata es miskan Hashem timei b'nichbasa, right? Kimei nid lo yizorek lov tamiyiyeh. So in the Parshas Chukas, in the Parsha Paramedum, it says tamiyiyeh. So in other words, asher really means optional. But we have an other pasuk that says, no matter which way you went ahead and contracted tuma, Tama you'll be Tame, and therefore you'll be Chayiv Karis if you walked in, even if it's a Mace Mitzvah. So in other words, another pasuk tells me Tama Mikol Makam. For the Gemara, I need a Tama to teach me something else. Ahumi Boile, the Chiditanya. Tama the Rabbis Tful Yoim. A person went to the mikvah, he goes into the base of Mikdash, it's before Herav Shemesh. What happens? Karis. Why? He went to the mikvah. Tame Yiyeh. He didn't wait the full amount of time for the paraduma to work. Oy tu masay boy. It says what? Oy tu masay boy. Tu masay boy. The rabbis mechusik Purim. It is a person who had a tumah come out of their body, a mitzayra, a zav, a yoledes. In all those cases, what? And that's not enough to go ahead and go to the mikvah. It's not enough to have Herav Shemesh. In addition, you have to bring a carbon. So if you would go into the base of Mikdash for your carbon, to Masayhu. So how can you say Tameh teaches me that even if you contracted Tumah, not optionally like by Mace Mitzvah, that you would be Chayev Karis? Tameh teaches me that it's full Yoim, and Tumasay teaches me what? B'chus Kippurim. That the Gemara says, right? I said from the word oid. Guys, the pasuk says, Tameh oid Tumasay. There's the word oid. My limud is not from Tameh. My limud is from word what? Oid. Still. No matter what, still he's Tameh. Even if it's Meis Mitzvah, he's Tameh, and he's going to get kares. So Einochinami. Asher means optional. Asher means optional. And therefore, I can learn out Asher Yavai Esrayeu Biyar. I came in there optionally, but where it's not optionally, it's a mitzvah, right? Therefore, you won't go to Golas for the mitzvah. You won't go to Golas for the mitzvah. If it's a mitzvah, you won't go to Golas, right? So L'chayr Asher means optional. What are you going to do with the Asher by Tumah? What happens when it's not optional? I have an oid, Tameh oid, he'll still be Tameh. The oid teaches me, even if he contracted Tumah, not optionally, because it was a mitzvah, still he's going to be Chayev Kares if he goes into the base of Mikdash. So good, we're holding good. Okay, this dialogue is set on a different Indian. This dialogue is set on a different Indian. Okay, the pasuk says, Sheishes Yamim, 6 days, Ta'avoid. Good. Well, now when it says Sheishes Yamim Ta'avoid, what's it speaking about? I'd say it's speaking about Shabbos. 6 days you should work. Ubayom Hashvi'i, and on the 7th day, Tishbos you should rest. What should you rest from? Bechorish, from plowing, ubekotzer, and from cutting Tishbos. Now, on Shabbos, we have to go ahead and rest from a lot more things than Charisha and Katsira, than plowing and cutting. So we're going to see a machlokes in Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel. What exactly is this pasuk speaking about? Like Rabbi Akiva, it's speaking about Shemitah, and like Rabbi Yishmael is speaking about Shabbos. And the above dialogue that we had concerning the difference between a Meis Mitzvah versus optional Tumah is going to play itself out in the Shita of Rabbi Yishmael that pasuk is speaking about Shabbos. So again, the pasuk says, Sheishes Yamim Tavoid Uvayom Hashvi Tishbos Bechorish Ubekotzer Tishbos. Says the Gemara. There are those who go ahead and apply the pasuk that we just commented on, the whole sugya that we just said on the following dialogue. Bechorish Ubekotzer Tishbos. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Eina tzarich le mechorish shel shvius. You don't have to tell me it's speaking about plowing in the Shemitah year, the kotzer shel shvius, or harvesting in the Shemitah year. You don't have to tell me that. Sheikh Nemar, it says, Sotchole Sizmar, you shouldn't go ahead and prune, you shouldn't plant in your field, the Karmachole Sizmar, and you shouldn't prune your vineyards. So I know you can't be speaking about the actual Shemitah year itself. Ela, what's it speaking about? Afilu chorish shel erev shvius shenichnas the shvius, the kotzer shel shvius sheyotzei l'moishe shvius. It's speaking about going ahead and plowing in the erev shmita to facilitate growth in the shmita. It's speaking about cutting moishe shvius and something that grew in the shmita year. Okay, that's what it's speaking about according to Rabbi Akiva. It's speaking about Shemitah. That's not a sugya. That's not a sugya. That's not the dialogue. But again, the pasuk, despite the fact that it's mashma, it's speaking about Shabbos, says Rabbi Akiva. It can't be speaking about Shabbos because in the 17th Shabbos, you can't do anything. You can't do any 39 melachos, not just chavisha and katsira. So therefore, I'm going to apply it to Shemitah. Rabbi Shmuel, let me know. It's speaking about Shabbos. Ma chorish rishus, just like plowing is a rishus, afkotz is so too harvesting is a rishus. Those you can't do on Shabbos. Yatsu kotz tzira oimer shehu mitzvah that you could do it on Shabbos. In other words, we know on Tes Zayin right now, you just began to make oimer. Right? By the way, if you forgot, it's the third day. So it's the third day. You're going to go ahead and if you have to cut on Shabbos, the oimer for the hakrava on Tes Zayin Nisan, that would be Doicha Shabbos. But Chorish B'Katzi of Rishus, that doesn't work. However, of the Ktsira would work. You would do on Shabbos. Now, this pshat of Rabbi Yishmael now is the subject of the dialogue that we just had before Le'inyan killing B'Shageg. Okay? Now, Amalei Ahumir Rabbanan L'Rava. Memai de Charisha de Rishus. Your whole thing was Charisha is Rishus, so Katsir is Rishus, correct? Because we never find Charisha being a mitzvah. Dilma Charishus Oimid a mitzvah. Just like before, maybe you were speaking about what? Cutting trees for a mitzvah of sukkah, cutting trees for what? For the maracha. Maybe over here the Charisha is for a mitzvah. Vafilu hachi am rachmana tishbais. Amalei, even the matzah charash. If you find the field plowed, ain't a chayrish, you don't have to plow it. Lav mitzvah. So again, Rava is giving the same teretz he gave before. Just like if we found trees cut for the sukkah, you don't have to cut. If you found trees for the amracha, you don't have to cut. Hu adin, it's charisha to perform a mitzvah, right? If you found a field nechrash, you don't have to go ahead and cut it. So memela, the same teretz. Now they can have the same kasha from Ravina to Rava. Eser Ravina l'Rava, yotza ava makes benoi, v'Rava roides talmidoi v'shliach bezdin v'mai lema kivin the ilu gomar lav mitzvah hashanami la mitzvah. If you found him in a state that there's no mitzvah to hit him, and the Gemara saying teretz hasam alpha gav de gomar nami mitzvah ka v'dechsiv yaseh bin chmiyanichecha. Hadam Rava says no. Lav milsi the army. That I told you before that if you found it charisha, you don't have to cut it. Similar to what I told you before, that if you found the wood cut, you don't have to cut it. If you found the field plowed, you don't have to plow it. That's not the pshat. From the pasuk itself, I can tell it to you. The Amri Katsira Dumid Charisha. Ma Charisha Matzah Chorish Eina Chorish. Af Katsira Nami. So you'd say Katsira Nami. Now, is that true? Guys, Oimer, if you found cut wheat, could you use it, or barley? Could you use it for the Oimer? No, you can't. Barley has to be cut. So what would you think? You're going to say, just like Charisha, if you find it Chorish, you don't have to plow. Hu Adin, if you find the barley cut, you don't have to cut, right? Mitzvah, matzah kotzer, ein a kaitzer, mitzvah liktzer ulahavi. It's a mitzvah to go ahead and cut and bring. So therefore, we had the same dialogue, and Rabbi says no. Rabbi says, I can tell you from the pasuk itself, comparing it to Charisha, because Charisha is taka, you find it cut. If you found it plowed, you don't have to plow, but cutting, you wouldn't say that. So therefore, ein achinami, it would be Doicha Shabbos, Ktsir would be Doicha Shabbos, and Hu Adin, if your kid is learned, there's still a mitzvah to go ahead and okay. Yaseh Bincha means to go ahead and raise him. Okay, this is not a lesson, chinuch. Been there, done that. Says the Mishnah, Ha'av goyla al yedei ben. If a father kills his son b'shogeg, he got a galus. Va'ben goyla al yedei av. And a son who kills a father also will go to galus. Hakol goylin al yedei Yisrael. Every Yisrael who kills another Yisrael will go to galus b'shogeg. Yisrael goylin al yedei him. So hakol goylin. We'll see what this means in the Gemara. Chutz mi ger toishav. If you kill a ger toishav b'shogeg, then again, Toishav is machlokes exactly what it is. Usually, we say Ger Toishav is a guy who keeps the Zayim Mitzvahs Makabel not to go ahead and do Avodah Zarah. The Ger Toishav ain't a Goyla al Yadei Ger Toishav, but a Ger Toishav would go to Golas al Yadei Ger Toishav. Fed Gemara. Ha'av Goyla al Yadei Ben. If the father kills the son, he goes to Golas. Va'amid Yoitza Av Hamakes Benoi. Meaning, if the father hits the son and kills the son, he's not going to go to Golas. Now you're telling me he does go to Golas? Says the Gemara, the Gomer. He was learned, so you didn't have a right to hit him. The Gemara, Afagav the Gomer mitzvah kavid. It's a mitzvah to hit him. Now it was said before V'yaseh bincha, right? Says the Gemara, B'shulei denagre. We're speaking about an apprentice. We're speaking about what? A person who's an apprentice. He's a carpenter apprentice. In other words, when do we say gomer means learning Torah? So when it comes to learning Torah, but where he's gomer, where he's learned a trade, so therefore, you still a mitzvah to hit him to learn. The Gemara, the Nagri Chiyusahu, the Lamdei. In other words, it's still you have a mitzvah to go ahead and teach him a trade. So if he has a trade already, you can hit him. Now the Gemara wanted to escape the kasha. We said that if a father hits a son to teach him to learn, he doesn't go to Galus. What happens if he's learned? Says the Gemara, it's when it says gomer, it means he's learning of a trade, but doesn't mean that he's learning Torah. The Gemara, if he's learning a trade, it's also a mitzvah. He has a trade already. He's a carpenter's apprentice, and it's a mitzvah to teach him a limud. So if the mitzvah to teach him a limud, you should not go to Galus. Yet our mitzvah says a father does go to Galus. Says the Gemara, the Goma emusa achrista. He has another parnasa. So it comes out like this. He's an electrician, and now he's an apprentice. He's an apprentice for something else, right? So there's no mitzvah. This apprenticeship that you're hitting for has nothing whatsoever to do with. There's no mitzvah for that. So therefore, you're not teaching him to learn. You're just hitting him, right? If you're teaching him to learn, you go to Golis. If you're teaching him to teach him to be an apprentice, and he has another trade, so if he has another trade, there's no mitzvah to hit him, and you're hitting him anyway. On that, av goylal yidei beno, he'll go to Golis in that scenario. Where he has another trade, he's learning this trade, and you're hitting him. There's no mitzvah to hit him for this trade, so there's no mitzvah. If there's no mitzvah, then what? Then you're going to go to Golis. Ben goylal yidei av. Mashma that a son who hits a father. Okay, now you might recall from Masechta Sanhedrin that for a child to go get killed does not have to kill the father if he just makes a hole in his father. If he makes a hole in his father, yes, you make a chabura in a father, you would get the death penalty. Nafkamina, fellas, is if you make a chabura, you get chenek. If you kill him outright, is hereg. Big difference, right? Chenek is when Elohim nechnakim is someone who goes ahead and makes the chabur in his father. If he kills his father, then he would get hereg. We had that sugya. What is more severe? Is hereg more severe? According to Rav Shimon, it is. According to Chachamim, sayif hereg. Excuse me, I said hereg. Chenek. Hereg is number 3 according in the hit parade according to Chachamim, and number 4 is what is chenek. Like Reb Shimon, it's the opposite. Chenek is number 3 and hereg is number 4. Keep that in mind. Says the Gemara. Urmini, I'll ask you a question. I'll ask you a stira. You're telling me it's a mitzvah to go ahead. You're telling me that if a son hits a father, he will go to Golus. The pasuk says, "Make nefesh bishkaga." You kill b'shoigeg, prat lemake aviv, right? Make aviv doesn't go to Golus. Let's see Rashi here. Make aviv, prat lemake aviv. The second word line. Shleichayiv Golus el lemi shehakaosay tluya b'nefesh. It says make nefesh. What does that mean? That the taking of his soul will kill you. Then you go to Golus. You don't have to take your father's soul to be chayiv misa, even making a hole in him. So that's going to go ahead and exclude you from Golus. Shleichayiv Golus olimisha kosu tluya b'nefesh she'ena chayiv alav elim kein hargay. You'd only be chayiv if you take his nefesh. Yatsu maka aviv. This will exclude hitting your father. Shu chayiv alav misa b'chabura ba'alma. You chayiv misa with just the chabura, making a hole in him. Because salkedaitach the memayalemi golus afilu hargay, and the havamina is that even if you kill him, you don't go to golus. So there you have a stira. Our Mishnah says if a son kills a father, he goes to golus. Where havamina of the Gemara is when it says maka nefesh, prat to a son who makes the chabur in his father. That since you can get killed for not taking his nefesh, you would not fit the paradigm that we need for going to Golus, which is taking away a nefesh. The son's going to die even when he doesn't take away a nefesh. So you have a kasha. the Havamina is that you might think that just making a hole in your father, you die. And the Havamina is that it's not speaking where you kill your father. So says the Gemara. Let's see it inside. Hav goyl al yedei urmini makan nefesh prat l'maka aviv. Maka aviv is excluded because you don't have to take his nefesh to go to Golus. Amrav kahana like kasha. Rab Shimon Rabbanan. Rab Shimon the Amar Chenek Chomer. Like Rab Shimon, who says Chenek is more Chomer, meaning making a Chabura is more Chomer than killing your father. Mesayif. Shigagas Sayif Nitn L'Kapara. Shigagas Chenek Nitn L'Kapara. So in other words, since if I kill him, you're Chayiv Chenek before you Chayiv Hereg by making the hole, you're not going to get a kapara. The kapara of Golus is only by Sayif. You're going to get Mechuyev B'Shas Chenek. Rashi. Rab Shimon the Amar, 3 lines down. Rab Shimon the Amar b'Sanhedrin Perik Daled Misais Chenek Chamer Misayif Uli Dei HaHariges Aviv B'Chenek. Someone who kills his father is B'Chenek Ditnan Mishin is Chayev Beis Misais Bezdin Nidin B'Chamura. If you chayiv 2 misais, so therefore you hit your father, you made a chabura, and you killed him. You chayiv chabura chenek. You chayiv hereg for killing him. You're going to get the more severe one, which is chenek. V'ahari gaviv chayiv shnei misais. Sha'oisa chabura ba'aviv mina nechnakim hein v'maken nefesh mina nerogim. V'kan yesh chabura aviv for itzicha. You have 2 things, Chaburis Aviv, and in fact, what? You have Ritzicha. Reb Shimon Amar Chenek Chamar, Im Hoye Zem Nezid, Hoye Bechenek. Yachar Shu Shoygeg, like Nitna Shigasi, the Kapara Begalis. In Nasna Torah Kapara, the Shoygeg Saif. Shukala, like Nitna Kapara, the Shoygeg. Okay, so guys, we have a stira. What's the stira? Our Mishnah says that a son goes to Golus if he hits his father, if he kills his father. We have a brisa that says, no, Makan Nefesh, excluding a son from Golus. That excluding a son from Golus, fellas, is Reb Shimon. Why? Because Reb Shimon says, you find Golus by Hereg. You don't have Hereg. Because why? You Mechayev for Chenek beforehand. Because Chenek's Mochamer. Like the Chachamim, that Hereg's Mochamer, then you would go to Golus. Of course, it parallels that. Okay. Okay, says the Gemara. Amrav kind of like Kesha, Harav Shimon. The brisa that says Makan Nefesh doesn't go to Golus is Reb Shimon. But Rabbanan, our Mishnah is the Rabbanan. But Firais, the Reb Shimon, the Amachenek Chomer Misayif, Shigas Sayif Nitl Kapara. Shigas Chenek like Nitl Kapara. And therefore, if one kills one's father, you chayiv the more severe svara, the more severe misa, which is chenek. And therefore, since you chayiv the more chomer one, you're not going to go to Golus. The Rabban and Dami sayiv chomer mechenek, payir gavu b'shagev shigas sayivu. That's our Mishnah. V'shigas sayiv nitl kapara. Rabbi Amar prat la'oisa chabura b'aviv b'shagev. This excludes a person who makes a chabura. In other words, when it says makan nefesh, says Rabbi, the limud is excluding someone who makes a chabur in his father. B'shogeg. Sakla mean keeping them amazed barkatolahu b'shogeg nami locally kamash malan. Guys, if a person kills his father, he goes to Golus. If a person kills his father, it's chayiv misa. If a person makes a hole in his father, it's chayiv misa. If a person kills his father, b'shogeg, he goes to Golus. If a person makes a chabur in his father, I would think he goes to Golus. Kamash malan, he doesn't go to Golus, but it's not a kasha. It's not a stira. The stira was only if you kill your father, right? There's no stira. You're not killing your father. You're just making chabura. You're chayiv misa, but you're not killing your father, and therefore it's not a stira.